You are about to enjoy a Firearms Radio Network podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing, feel free to throw us some love by giving us a 5-star review anywhere that you're listening to this or any of your other podcasts. Tonight's episode, just like every other episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcast on the Firearms Radio Network. Tonight, we will be talking about AJ Zito of Practical Performance Trainings. Damn, that's a terrible way to say that, right? Tonight, we're going to be talking about AJ's 1911 driver course. AJ joins us with his student, Matt. And go ahead, share this out with your friends, family. If you have any enemies, let them know to come over and join us here as well. If you want to join any of our giveaways, go to afteractionproject.com/giveaway. And then, of course, we will have the fully edited and produced version of this episode on the Firearms Radio Network, firearmsradio.tv. You can join us, become a Patreon at patreon.com/afteractionproject. And I think that's enough of the spammy sales stuff. So let's get into it. AJ, welcome back. Great to have you back. We had you on here, I don't know, a decade ago talking about your gunsmithing course. Today, we're going to be talking about your 1911 driver course. So reintroduce yourself to our listeners. Do that thing that every podcast host wants you to do. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, and then let's dive into the 1911 driver course. What is it, and what can students expect?
Sure. So first off, thanks for having me back, guys. It has been a minute. So, yeah, I'm AJ Zito. I run a company called Practical Performance. When I'm not teaching performance shooting, I build custom 1911s and what are commonly referred to as 2011s. So I am a real gunsmith. And like last time I was on the show, we were talking about gunsmithing. And the course I used to teach at a gunsmithing college. Here today, we're going to talk a little bit about my 1911 driver course, right? The 1911 driver course, I hate to use the term operator, like I hate the term operator, but a lot of people deem it as like a 1911 operator course, right? It's basically what I think are the most important things you as a shooter who has decided to shoot either a 1911 or a 2011 needs to know in order to truly run that system, both from like a maintenance and mechanical standpoint, as well as a shooting mechanics standpoint. So it's kind of a, it's an interesting mix of like, I hate to say armoring, right? But kind of working on your own gun to keep it running and keep it doing the stuff you want it to do, and how to kind of exploit some of the major benefits of running the 1911 or 2011 system. So that's 1911 driver in a nutshell. I do have to say this, right? The original name was not 1911 driver. It was 1911 craftsman. And I had to change the name. And now I'm getting emails because people are like, what's the difference between craftsman and driver? It's exactly the same course. But so many people reached out to me asking, all the tools they needed for my 1911 builder class because they thought the craftsman course was we're going to build a 1911 in 2 days class. And that's absolutely not what the class is. So we had to change the name for that. So they are the same course, but the new name is 1911 driver. And that's the name we're continuing on, but it's the same course. So we alleviate any confusion there.
So you're not building a 1911 from scratch in 2 days?
No, sir. No, we are not. I have not figured out that recipe yet, though when I do, I still won't do it because it'll be wrong. But that's it.
I'm out.
Heard that. Yeah. I think Springfield can put together a 1911 from scratch in 2 days. Matt, talk to us a little bit about who the heck you are, your training experience, and what brought you to AJ's 1911 driver course.
All righty. First of all, it's really cool to be on a podcast. Previously, I just watched these. So it's a huge honor to be on one of these. Thanks to AJ and you for having me on here. My name is Matt Rakestraw. I really am, I'm a performance shooter. I'm technically skilled with the pistol. I've really just been doing a lot of training this year. My very first course was Modern Samurai Project, where I first met AJ way back in El Paso in like March. It snowed. It snowed in El Paso. It was really interesting. It poured that first day. A couple other different troubles with there, but I really saw how good he was with the 1911. It was a staccato rebuild, or a really cool gun. I got the shot. I'm like, that's awesome. I want to shoot more of these. So Scott really talked about his class. I'm like, I'll go take his class. So I drove 11 hours to Iowa at an awesome class. And then I had to drive 11 hours back to get on an airplane to fly out to essentially Mexico. But it was absolutely worth it, every single second. What really drew me to AJ was really how well he shot at the Modern Samurai Project course, which he pretty much shot cold. The way that he taught, and really his just knowledge with the 1911. And then obviously I got a lot of that for 2 days at the 1911 course. Oh, I guess I should probably shill my Instagram. My Instagram is Gunpowder and Paper. I release notes for all the classes I go to, which is, I think, what AJ drew me to me, because I take really good notes. And this isn't just scribbles. This is like what you do. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen Matt's notes on classes he's taken, you're doing yourself a disservice. Find Matt and find his notes if he allows you to see them, because they are amazing. Amazing.
Thank you.
So
awesome. So 1911 driver course, I'm assuming that you would students need to attend with a 1911. Talk to us a little bit about the other gear requirements. How many rounds of ammo are students shooting? Is it a from the holster course?
Sure. Yeah. So yes, you absolutely need a 1911 pattern gun. But again, we're living in an odd time where I say 1911 and guys are like, well, can I bring my staccato? Yes, a 2011 is a 1911 pattern gun. It's the same system, just one's a double stack, one's a single stack. So you need some type of a true 1911 pattern gun. It is a performance shooting course too. That's the thing, right? So, we start right away with basically we're going to zero the guns, and then we're going to get in on the draw, right? So we're gonna talk, because with the 1911 and 2011 platforms, we've got that clicky thing, right? That thumb safety that we need to be concerned about how we operate, when we operate. And, different holsters, different carry setups affect how we operate that gun. It's not as simple as just pull it out and go to work. Depending on where you carry it, there's a timing aspect to it. So we get right in dealing with that. The actual round count at the end of the course, and I tell everyone, bring about 800 rounds. The actual round count is closer to about 550 to 600-ish rounds by the time we're done. And again, that number can fluctuate depending on, some classes run long because we get great questions, or guys want more information on the way the system works. Because for a lot of us, I take for granted, being a gunsmith, it's like, yeah, this is just how 1911 works. I take it apart and put it back together in my sleep. For a lot of people, the 1911 is an incredibly intimidating system, especially to take apart and put back together. And everyone's afraid, like, if I take it apart, I may never get this thing back together. Because while it is a very simple system, for a first timer, it is not an easy, like, you can't look at it and go, I suppose this goes here. So we talk a fair bit about that, and we get a lot of good questions about that too, and kind of what the limits of an end user should be. where you should kind of draw the line and be like, listen, now you need to contact an armor or a gunsmith to start doing stuff. But that's the interesting thing about the class is it's a fair bit of lecture with a fair bit of shooting as well, because there's things that we have to talk about in order to keep the 1911 running, and things you don't need to really consider, or we don't consider when we shoot Glocks and SIGs and M&Ps and so on and so forth.
One of our common questions we have here, AJ, we've probably asked you on the last podcast, and who's this student for? But I'm going to take it kind of a little bit different. I don't shoot 1911s, but I own one. Often we just use it as a loaner gun because you have to qualify with a large caliber here in New Mexico for concealed carry. So a guy like me, I'm somewhat experienced. Could I take my 1911, go to your course and get something out of it? Or is this more designed for somebody that's got some 1911 experience under their belt?
No, 100%. Like if you just want more information about the 1911, listen, at the end of the day, I'm not turning you into an armorer. I'm not turning you into a gunsmith. I'm just telling you things and how to do things that you should be aware of if you're going to run the system at any level. There are things we don't realize the complexity of the system. And part of it is the 1911's gotten a real bad rap over the last several years, especially the last 20 some years. And what I want to do partly with this class is show you that the reason this system gets a bad rap has nothing to do with the system itself. It has to do with us being uneducated for the most part. And a more educated end user is always a better end user, whether you choose to use the system or not. If you own one, everything in the class is going to apply to you, because one day you're going to be at the range and you're like, oh man, my student's loaner gun is all of a sudden having feeding issues. Well, chances are you can fix it right there, right now, in about, 3 minutes, if you know what to do. Otherwise, most people are like, oh, send it back to the factory. Well, there's, $100 here, and then 3 weeks back to the factory, and so on and so forth. So this course helps you alleviate that, even if you're not going to be a hardcore 1911, 2011 end user. So, and I think a great thing for this too is, Matt, you're not a 2011, 1911 shooter, but you brought one to the class, right? So yeah. So it's funny. My first series carry gun was a Series 80 Gold Cup. The rear sight broke because I shot ball through it, and I didn't say, oh, I hate it. I was like, okay, fine, I'll carry a Glock. I'm wearing a staccato hat, but at the MSP course, I was shooting a Glock. And so I just didn't bring my staccato because I was running iron sights, and I'm a dot guy, I like dots. But just the amount of information that I learned from there, and I'll say I'm relatively new compared to like you guys, 1911s, but like I was at the range the other day, and one of the RSOs was talking to a guy. He's like, "Oh, 1911, you need such and such magazines." When it's like, I don't know, I might, if the guy's having problems, AJ, and recommended checking an extractor. And I was actually asking my buddy at work. It's like, "Oh, do you know how to tune your extractor? What's that?" It's like, "Oh, okay, well." If that guy who went and he unfortunately, or he bought a model 1911 that's not very good, and if he took your course though, he would know how to tune the extractor actually, and he would know how to tune the ejector, and even more importantly, know about over insertion. And on a various Facebook posts like over insertion, that's a myth, and it's like 3 guys I really trust, which are Joe Chambers, Hilton Yam, and AJ Zito, all say that's a bad thing. and that it exists. So, yeah. Yep.
Real quick, Jeremy's on his how many? 5th, 9th kid? I don't know what it is, Jeremy. I think if anybody knows about over insertion, it's probably him. Just saying.
4th kiddo.
Completely different issue. Completely.
Wait, one's a good thing, the other is a bad thing, right? Yeah, fourth kiddo will be here next week. My third girl. So,
Oh man.
many more
Poor
guns in
man.
the future. So,
Congrats. Make sure
talk to
you
us.
check your
Check my ejector. Yeah. Talking about the 1911 issues that I don't want to say plague, but some of these common 1911 issues, are they user error? Are they related? Are they inherent design? I don't want to say design flaws, but are they issues that are inherent to the 1911 because the end user doesn't understand it? Or what are some of the causes for these, the 1911 shit talking that goes around, like, oh, the two world wars, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now. Okay. Here we go. The biggest issue and my biggest pet peeve out there on this new rash of 1911, 2011 end users, and it is 100% a user issue, is this whole taping or rubber banding your grip safety shenanigans. Okay. That is a problem that we've created in the training world. And then people started shooting 1911s again, and they're like, oh my God, these grip safeties don't work. They're terrible. Here's the deal, right? We've all been taught, for the most part, our entire lives to grip as high up on the back strap of the gun as you possibly can get. Well, let me tell you, when you have something at the back of your gun that pivots, the higher you go, the farther away from the gun you actually get, the less you deactivate the grip safety. So you think you're gaining something by getting that high on the gun, and in reality, you're not. There is such a thing as getting too high on the back strap of the gun, and that's where we see people not knowing how, or not getting their grip safeties to deactivate. Now, I'm not going to say that every 1911 comes from the factory with a properly tuned grip safety. Most of them come from the factory it takes about 50% of the actual movement of the grip safety to disengage, right? For me, that's a lot of movement. You should really be looking anything around 25 to 30, 33% of movement before it disengages. But 50% is absolutely manageable. But we've got this idea that we need to be so high on the back strap of this gun that it's going to, number one, we think it's going to have way more of an effect on recoil than it does. That's not where recoil management occurs. And number two, we actually create our own issue in that. So we need to stop doing that. And us as trainers created this issue, really, coming from, Glocks and M&Ps and SIGs and all these other guns that back, beaver tail style or grip safety guns weren't a thing. So that's a user issue. That being said, there are a lot of gun issues out there, and it has nothing to do with the design. It has to do with the application. Manufacturers are just not building the guns correctly. That's what it comes down to. The majority of manufacturers are not spending the amount of time that it takes to build the guns to actually build the guns. The biggest issue I see almost across the board with almost every major manufacturer of the 1911 in the production market. We're talking your Springfields, your Arms Corps, your whatever lower end type guns. They don't understand extractor tension or how the extractor actually works on the gun. So you're probably going to get, we talked in the pre-show about the new offerings from Springfield, and every single one of them I've seen has improper extractor tension from the get-go. And it's improper extractor tension and profile will shut down in 1911 faster than anything else out there. And it's so fixable. You can fix it at the range with zero tools. It takes 4 seconds to fix, but we don't know how to do it anymore. So that's a big problem. That's a big problem. And again, almost all the problems and the reason the 1911 has gotten such a bad rap and the 2011 has gotten a bad rap up until recently with the redesign from Sean Armstrong, who's now at Staccato as their head gunsmith. They were manufacturer issues that end users didn't know how to deal with, so they just poo-pooed on the system. And that's unfortunate because there is no system as accurate as the 1911 system. It's just not out there in a handgun. And truly, as far as, user interfaces, I've yet to find anything as user friendly as the 1911, if you know how to use it. So, yeah.
Well, you mentioned we don't do it anymore. I'm sitting here thinking like, I don't know how to do it at all. So there's that. But I think that's a great course that needs to be done for people that are very common 1911 users. I mean, yeah, they do get this bad stigma, of course, online as much as Glock, and it's just kind of like the whole Ford versus Chevy thing. But I often hear so many guys, it's like, oh, 1911 is the only gun, it's the most reliable gun. I'm like, yeah, but why do they break? And then no one ever has the answers. And I think if we had those answers, even me as an instructor, I'd love to have those answers as well. So Matt, what did you get out of this course specifically? What was your goal in going and taking this class?
My goal really was I'm enamored with the 1911. I want to have that 1.5 inch, 1.5 inches at 50 yards accuracy, because why would you not want that? And I want to be able to run it as fast as I can with my Glock. I earned Gabe White's triple pin with my Glock. I've earned Brian Hill's Black Ant patch with my Glock, and I know I can be faster with the 1911 or 2011 platform. And I know AJ can get me there. So that's really one of the reasons that I wanted to do that. Another thing is that to coincide with my previous failures with the 1911, like my Colt Gold Cup, which obviously that's my fault for misunderstanding, but still that stupid little pin that it Eliason sights, it's going to break. And, I'm not here to shoot bullseye, but I want the performance of the 1911 with the speed of performance shooting, and AJ can get me there and other instructors can get me there. Like, why wouldn't anybody want that? However, I recognize, because of the way the gun is designed and made, that I'm going to have to be a craftsman, which is why I really like that craftsman's term, because you can judge a craftsman by their tools. Have good tools, but the knowledge to use them. I love Glocks, but like what was it? The M&P. AJ outshot his M&P, and then he went to 1911s. I'm getting to that point. I'm not that good yet, and thankfully I've never got to use the old M&P, because why would I do that? But I want to be able to run my guns fast and accurate, which means to me it's going to have to be a 2011 style platform eventually. And I guess kind of to add that in together, like when AJ was talking about the beaver tail safety, so the way he changed his verbiage specifically, instead of saying get high in the gun, he said match the web of your hand to the web of the beaver tail, which then it just clicked instantly. Because when I was drawing with my Staccato before, I would sometimes get a failure to engage the grip safety because it was like at 60%. It wasn't at 50%. It's like, this thing's never going to disengage. So essentially, to answer your question, I want to be as accurate as I can, as fast as I can be, which means eventually a great 2011 style pistol. With, of course, 23 rounds of 9.
Yeah, that's one of the obstacles to overcome is the capacity of it. Talk to us a little bit about what the first day of that course looked like, Matt. What were some of the drills that you were doing after you got through the medical brief, and what should students expect on day one?
Yeah, so let's see. So day one, I'm actually going to refer to my notes here because I want to get this right. So day one, it was first of all, I just really liked AJ's safety review. His the way that he taught we all know the classic 4 rules. He addressed the 4 rules in a more modern context. Brian Hill said that the 4 rules are, first of all, really they're a little outdated. Not that we all know them, but there's better ways to address them. For example, how do you dry fire in a hotel room if you're inside a hotel room, right? Theoretically, you can't if you follow the 4 rules. The way that AJ addressed that, I really like that. Then we, first of all, jumped into the variability of the 1911. We jumped straight into holster overview. that means like, okay, you know, we all like Safariland, but if you're running Staccato, you might or might not get a good one. So AJ had a really cool secret that involved SIG 320 holsters, how to essentially make them for 2011s. Sorry, AJ, I let that secret out.
It's okay. It's going to get out eventually.
Yeah. Then we jumped straight into red dots. Unfortunately, I was the only guy running irons, which is funny because I'm an iron dot guy. I got to explain that. So what I bought, of course, we all bought Larry Vickers 1911 pistol guide, and I saw the Delta pistols. I'm like, that looks just like the Staccato sight. So I went and bought Staccatos with those buried. They're not Bomar sights, Bomar S. It's like I gotta have that. So I ran that.
Protected Bomar is the official cut, but
yeah, I'm a Delta operator now, right? Because I bought the gun. So I was the only fool running irons at AJ's course. But so AJ jumped right into red dots and he tried to help me out. Then straight into gun modification. So really a lot of it at first was how to really set your gun up correctly with holsters or red dots, because there are a lot of different variations in 1911s. We talked a lot more because it actually rained a little bit at Iowa the first day too. To answer your question, some of the first drills that we did, we first zeroed, of course. We did, was it the 5 and 4 drill, where, and then we did one-shot draws. We did a little bit of speed right there. AJ covered the draw, very similar to Jedlinski's, but more with 1911 style focus. And then we jumped straight into smaller targets with the 5 and 4 drill. And then I think it was lunchtime right there. Let me explain the 5 and 4 drill. So yeah, the 5 and 4 drill is 5 shots and 4 seconds at a head box at 10 yards, the entire head box. From what I understand, the entire point of this was to draw and to get to a smaller target than say an A zone, more, and to understand the entire point of how to manipulate a trigger differently, such as with a refined trigger press or an accelerated trigger press. And that was really the goal of the day right before lunch. Am I correct, AJ? Because this is your class.
Yep, right. Spot on, man. Yeah, because that is the whole point of that exercise, right? So we do the one-shot draws to an A zone, right, which you can get away with a little more of an accelerated trigger press. Then when we back it up to 10, right, and you've got 5 rounds, you need to have a much more refined trigger press on that head box. So it's just understanding, the difference between, let's say, an accelerated trigger press or a refined trigger press, or some might refer to it as a prep and press, depending on who you talk to. But yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I guess that really replicates a lot of what the course is. There's a lot more lecture because it has to be. You're talking about highly technical concepts, or at least highly technical for the beginner. And then you're jumping into really fun drills where you're talking about highly technical concepts as well. So it's really an intermediate to advanced class, but advanced because of all the technical aspects coming together to make you a better driver or craftsman.
What are some of the things? What are the things? How do I want to say this? Right, Matt, you were talking a little bit about speed and how you're wanting to have the speed in your performance on the 1911 that you're getting out of your Glock. AJ, what are some of those things that make it more difficult or slow students down on the 1911 platform or system compared to one of the plastic guns?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? So probably the biggest thing that slows students down when they get to a 1911 or 2011 is they have no concept of when they actually need to be activating or deactivating the thumb safety. More often than not, because we want to go with the kind of the traditional Cooper-esque rules, right? Sights on target before I take my safety off. That's a real problem. And I see students do that all the time where the gun is on target and the safety is still engaged. They find their sights, they take the safety off, then they touch the trigger, and then they press the trigger. And that's, we don't do that with any other system. I don't know why we accept it with the 1911, because it's really not how the 1911 is intended to run. And as far as my knowledge goes, and I've researched it a fair bit. That's not actually how it was taught in Cooper's day either. But guys are so afraid to get that safety off soon enough. And I'll give you guys the answer here, and I preach this constantly, right? You cannot build a good two-handed grip on the 1911 or on any gun with your thumb safety engaged. You can't, right? Because the second you go to disengage that thumb safety, you're pushing your own hand out of the way, which sacrifices the grip. So before both hands get on the gun, before that support hand gets on the gun, that safety has got to be off. What I like to tell guys is as soon as you clear kydex or body, whichever is later, right, that's when that thumb safety needs to get disengaged. Right. And that's with the understanding that we're already in the shooting process. We've made the decision to shoot. Guns coming out. We're going to fire a round or multiple rounds. As soon as I clear body or kydex, that safety needs to come off so I can start doing work. But that's a big thing that slows a lot of guys down when it comes to the 1911. The other thing, when it comes to the trigger, listen, there's no other trigger out there like the 1911. It is literally the only trigger currently on the market, I believe, that you can actually press straight to the rear because it's designed to go straight to the rear, right? Which makes it, you can pull a lot more practical accuracy out of the system because of that. But you can also pull a lot of speed out of the gun. The trigger has a lot less travel compared to other systems out there. All the hinge systems, we've got a lot of movement to the point where lots of companies now sell you a short reset trigger or a short reach trigger for their guns, and they're still longer than the 1911. But because of that, guys get a little afraid to get on the trigger of a 1911. Oftentimes, because we've got this idea that 1911 triggers should have zero movement before they go off. And to me, that's not how you set up a 1911 trigger. My triggers have lots of take up so that I can get on my trigger and get to the wall when I want to. I don't want to just touch my trigger and the gun goes bang. That's a terrible way to set up a trigger for any application. I don't know anyone that does that. And I can tell you, back when I shot precision rifle, right, I knew guys that had very, very, very light, in the ounces light triggers, right? And while they had some success, it seemed to me, right, the more guys that had a little bit of play in the trigger where they could actually stage their trigger and then decide to finish the trigger press, way more successful. And I see that on handguns all the time with all the systems out there. So give yourself a little bit of room, but also understand how your trigger works, right? Understand that the 1911 is such an awesome system that you can set it up to work the way you want it to work. If you want take up, you can have a gunsmith put take up in the trigger. If you want a rolling break versus a crisp glass rod break, as everyone claims to love, you can have that done. But if you know your trigger, you should not be afraid to get on that trigger, prep that trigger, know when the trigger is going to go off. This whole idea that, my gun going off should surprise me. No, that's called a negligent discharge. So it should not surprise you. I know when my trigger is going to break because I am intimately involved with it, as my friend Scott says. So
I never understood that whole glass rod break thing, even as a brand new student. I just never got it. I was like, why do I want something that has to snap to feel like something broke in my finger for my gun to go off? I just never got it. On the safety thing, on the safety thing I saw was so S2022. We just got back from that, right? And we had a really good shooter there, law enforcement officer. And I noticed I could literally hear it in my ear every time she went to shoot. Click, bang, 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 click, click, bang, 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 click. And then it was that whole, she's like, yeah, well, we have to do this because law enforcement makes us do that. And I could just see the veins sticking out of AJ's head every time he saw it. And he'd like, yeah, I know they make you do it, but you don't have to do it here. And it's just kind of like that habit change of like, how can I break this habit when I leave here? from doing it so well in class. But I think those, again, we could go down the road of all the things that plague us in the gun industry. But Matt, what do you think as far as your Glock compared to a 1911? Do you think it's just experience of running your Glock for so long to where you want to get the 1911 up to the speed that you can shoot a Glock, or what is your goal there? What are you looking for? I mean, obviously we want speed and precision, but when you run a 1911 and you run a Glock and you're doing well with a Glock, why change?
Why change? Because I know the platform can be better. I mean, I just go to what USPSA, just look at any open guy where they're running, right? They're running awesome. They're not running awesome Glocks or running awesome 2011 style pistols. So I see that, and I see, hey, if they can do that, I can do that. And we're essentially carrying open guns that were open in the 90s, right? So why not carry that? For me, what slows me down is that I really started really trying to train really hard really last year, and I found some MSP videos. I'm like, okay, this guy's fast, and I just practiced that. That's why AJ, you probably see me do high thoracic, because I just literally saw Scott do high thoracic. I'm like, okay, that's the fastest way to do it. Then I saw him do the cheater position. I'm like, damn it, should have practiced that more. But so I'm faster with this than the cheater position. So actually, that's a really good analogy. I think the 1911 is like the cheater position, whereas high thoracic is like a good Glock position. I mean, without going, all analogies fail, and so I'll stop that analogy there. Like what AJ says, the 1911, that I got my Staccato next to me, the trigger just moves less. Theoretically, I should be able to fire that faster than my Glock. Everyone knows about the grip angle, how good it feels in your hand. It just points correctly. So theoretically, when I present it out, I can see the dot faster. When I can see the dot, I get more data. That means that I can break my shot sooner, or I have to work a lot less. I guess what it really boils down to is that with 1911 style pistols, I have to work less, which means my shooting performance can theoretically be higher. But what I need to do is, first of all, is put a lot more hours into my actual Staccato here, and learn how to shoot target focus with my irons, or get it milled like I should have way back.
Yeah. Every time I take a course, Matt, you think you got this thing down, right? And then all of a sudden you take a course, and then you go to AJ, and AJ's like, you're a complete moron for getting your grip as high up on the gun as possible. Who taught you that? It's like, well, every single other instructor I've ever been to, right?
Yeah, but, I will say, I when I first started, I actually read Jeff Cooper's, the modern book. I read all that because I'm like, oh, the old guys know how to shoot, right? Texas Rangers and all that, right? So when I was in the 1911 class, when you go down, you put your thumb safety on. I was like, and AJ's like, what are you doing? It's like, but Jeff Cooper, and I read this. It has to be right. So yeah, and he dressed everybody on the line like that. So now it's like, thumb safety off, fly to your codex. So you're absolutely right. When you go to someone who can perform today with this awesome equipment, you should probably listen to them and do what they tell you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I want to kick it back over to AJ because I have a completely ignorant question, and I'll let Jeremy do his thing here. But why are there not triggers like 1911s in common handguns today? Our technology has just gotten so amazing with guns, right? Every year they just get better and better, unless you're Springfield. But why is there not a 1911 trigger in a good gun today? I had a Hudson there for a while, and we don't have to go down that road of what happened with Hudson. But why not? How come we can't do this?
Yeah. So Hudson was coming close. They were trying to figure out the thing. Really, it comes down to the ignition system. The way the 1911 ignition system works, right? The trigger works in a straight line. So if you imagine the front of the trigger, the bar goes straight back, which actually sits right about here in your hand ish, which is much lower than all the rest of the guns out there. They don't have anything sitting in there. Everything is much higher up. Think of a Glock, think of an M&P. All their systems are much higher in the gun themselves. because they're utilizing a hinge style trigger. That disconnect, right? Because there's a connection that has to be made in order to fire the gun, right? So we know the firing pin has to be in line with the cartridge when it fires. We know that, right? And then from there, something has to fire that striker or that firing pin, whether it's a hammer, right? Which the reason the 1911 can get away with it is because it's a hammer fired system. The hammer is connected through a strut. The trigger actuates the sear, which then releases the hammer and fires the gun. But that happens lower in the system than a striker fired system happens. That all happens much higher. So really, it comes down to design. How do you make a connection system that allows you to have the 1911 style trigger, right, which has a bow in it that surrounds the magazine. The trigger actually goes completely around the magazine, the trigger bow. How do you create a modern handgun that'll utilize that system and have a connection system that will allow it to work with a modern style, striker system or any of the other, single action style striker systems available out there. If someone has cracked the code, they're suppressing it very well, because I haven't seen one out there. And, I've made the joke for probably a good 20 plus years now, where if someone can just figure out this whole Glock Teen 11 thing, I'll be very happy, and we can all run those. And, Wilson actually was doing a lot of interesting work several years ago trying to develop that very type of system. I just don't think it ever kind of came to fruition, unfortunately. So yeah. Yep. It's a shame.
Yeah. What was that, Matt?
Oh, I was going to ask a quick follow-up question.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. The bow around the magazine, like the Luger did that, but like no other gun did that, so that's another reason, right?
Yeah. So there are other guns that do it. They just don't do it exactly the same way. The connection, right, so the 1911 actually is connected with the disconnector in the gun. You need to figure out a way to have that connection system happen. Other guns have similar designs, but they don't utilize the triggers the same way we do, with that straight press to the rear inside a channel within the frame. So yeah,
this is always one of those questions, like, why is the sky blue thing? That's my first one I've always wondered. And then the second one is, we have great AR-15s, right, where we have a bolt that cycles within instead of a slide. And I'm like, why can't somebody come up with an AR-15 style bolt in a handgun, just really shrink it down? And I've always told Jeremy, because he likes to try to invent stuff, I'm like, dude, you make something like this, you'd be a millionaire, bro.
It's actually called a Desert Eagle, and it exists.
It's just too big, right?
It's still big. That Beretta PX4 Storm handgun uses a very similar system as well, with a locking delayed blowback bolt, essentially. But yep, go figure that shit out.
Yeah, we had a Beretta on the line. I think it was PX Storm last weekend, and she was having cycling issues. A little bit of grip stuff. I think it's some ammo stuff, because I threw Andy's reloads in there, and it ran fine. But that's the second or third one that we've seen in the class, and it's every one of them has been a female student, and that gun's been recommended to them by a gun shop owner, and they've just not had much success with that gun. Sorry, somebody is spamming our comments section, so let me just clear up some of those spams. Cool. Well, that really took me off. I should have flashed one on the screen. It was a link to some other. It's not gun related. It was the other one that the internet likes to suppress. So trying to get back on topic here, Matt, who do you think this student, we talked a little bit about who this student is for. In the class, who were some of the students? What was the student profile of some of the folks that you shared that class and that range with?
Let's see. So I'd say that this is actually a really good class. There was everybody was competent. Actually, I've been to some other classes where it's like, okay, I'm not going to go anywhere near that guy. He's going to shoot me if the instructor is not paying attention. But everybody was competent. The equipment, everybody had really good equipment. I think I had the least expensive gun, right? There was 2 or 3 Joe guns on the line, which is like, whoa, that's more Joe guns I've seen in my life all together. Let me touch one, It was but yeah, so I'd say that the overall shooter here was a serious 1911 enthusiast, someone who knows what essentially what they're about and how to squeeze every single ounce of performance out of this platform that they can get to. I would recommend that anyone who is competent with like a gun and they want to know a 1911, let's say like LTC courses are super, super low level, right? So if you go and you do limit, like you dry fire seriously for 2 or 3 months, you're like, how can I get better? And you really want to run the 1911 platform, I'd say, yeah, go ahead and go to this class. I'd say if you went and you bought a staccato and you would be a cool operator, this class will provide you with good knowledge. I think the shooting will leave you behind, though. I'd say anybody who wants to know, they would absolutely do great with the technical knowledge, especially if you already are mechanically inclined, which I think a lot of gun guys are, or gun girls, just because they typically like cars and other stuff. But I would not recommend this as your first class. Your second class, yeah. Your first class, no, because we're going to talk about trigger manipulations. We're going to do headshots. We're going to do shooting at 25 yards, which is more than like 90% of the people who's never shot. So the profile for this class was serious enthusiast. And I think people who are serious enthusiasts really want to push performance and want to keep their gun up and running would like this class.
AJ, is that tracking with what you're seeing and the students that are showing up for this class for you?
Yeah, absolutely. With the I hate to say resurgence, but with the popularity of the staccatos now as a platform getting adopted by a lot of law enforcement agencies, right, or individual law enforcement officers, I'm getting a lot more law enforcement guys in the class that for one reason or another they're jumping on, like Andy, we were talking, that one student, their department has an operator class, a transitional class they call it, right, for people that want to shoot 1911s and 2011s. And I see that all the time where guys are like, hey, we don't know what we don't know, and we want to go in here and basically see if we're on the right track as far as transitioning officers into this system, or if we're like way off base because we're just handing them guns and telling them go do good things. So I see several law enforcement guys in the class now. I'm trying to think. I haven't had any of that guy yet in these classes, which I'm very, very thankful for, right? Especially with the popularity of this class, and the popularity of the 2011 system now, or 1911, 2011 systems. So it's typically I've had some pretty good luck as far as everyone's a pretty accomplished shooter. I haven't had anyone show up where it was their first class yet. And I'm right there with Matt. This should absolutely not be your first class within the training world, as far as performance shooting or gun handling, because that's really not who this class is for. But yeah, I'd say that pretty much jives with what I'm seeing in the class.
So is there a better entry level or first 1911 than the Staccato. Staccato seems to be all the hotness, the rage right now. And if it's not the Staccato, or maybe it is the Staccato and it's another, what would you recommend a great 1911 for somebody's first 1911?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I have to separate it, right? If we're talking a 1911 single stack gun, okay, single stack gun, meaning if you're going to get it in 9mm, it's going to be 10 rounds plus one, so on and so forth. Right, a single stack gun. I have not found anything as an entry level gun that beats a Dan Wesson. Like the Dan Wesson Specialist is hands down for the money. It won't break the bank. I think they're going for $1,400. It's a great value, and no other gun at that price point touches it. I would have no problem picking up that gun, taking it out of the box, verifying zero, and carrying that gun. That's how much confidence I have in them. 2011 wise, so double stack 1911. Right now, just get the Staccato. No one out there is doing anything that I would trust my life with out of the box, except for Staccato. We were talking in the pre-show, right? I have high hopes for this Prodigy, the Springfield Prodigy. I'm trying to figure out a way to get it to be a gun that you could ship to someone like me and put, minimal work into, and it be carry ready gun, right? At this point, however, it's turning out to be much harder to make that happen based on some of the choices that they've made from the factory and the build quality of that Prodigy gun. Still trying to figure it out. It comes down to, what is absolutely necessary to make it run and what is nice to make it run. So we're still trying to figure that out. But yep, right now, just get the Staccato. Most of them can be had for around $2,000. And I think that's extremely reasonable as an entry level into the 2011 platform.
Yeah, we got a listener question. I was actually going to ask the same exact question, so I think it's perfect. You disappoint me because I thought you were going to say Kimber was the best thing to start with, but what's your thoughts?
Only if you want to practice malfunction clearance, then get one.
Right. Bull Armory. What do you think about that, AJ? My daughter was looking for a 1911 style gun for my future son-in-law, and I was at our local gun store, the guys that we trust, and he was like, for the price, hands down, get a Bull Armory. Unfortunately, they were sold out. So what do you think?
My question, along with pretty much always this style of question, is what's the intended purpose of the gun? What are you going to do with it? If you're just going to mess around at the range with it, sure, knock yourself out. Understand that, it's interesting because everyone thinks the Bull Armory guns are relatively new on the scene in the last couple of years. Bull Armories have been imported for years and years and years through various importers. I think even at one point Wilson Combat was importing them, if I remember correctly. I'll have to check on that, but they've been around for a while. Go plink with it. You want to attempt some USPSA or IDPA with it? Sure, knock yourself out. Would I take a Bull Armory and carry it or do anything like take it to nationals without any work done to it? Absolutely not. I would not. But if you're just looking for hey, I want to dip my toe in this with no serious intention of doing anything with it, sure, go ahead. But that's the thing. Be prepared to tinker. So
I might have a follow-up question for that too, AJ.
sure.
So specifically, and not to start a caliber war, right? But maybe the heresy of the single stack in 9 is that kind of a special sauce, or for we'll just say for carry, would you not recommend, but what Dan Weston would a 9? Actually, I'll change the range. Would Dan Weston 9mm be, I'll say, funner for the average Joe who just wants to have a good 1911 to shoot at the range? Would a 9mm be the way to go?
Listen, there's only one caliber, and it's 40 by God 5.
Okay.
All right. No, that's not true
Yeah.
at all. I'll tell you, I get it, right? If John Moses Browning wanted it in 9mm, he would have made it in 9mm. The Commanders were designed at 9mm. Everyone just calm down. All right. Shooting a 9mm 1911 is awesome. It's super awesome. It's a really heavy gun with a small caliber, and it's fun. It's awesome. It's super easy to control. By all means, knock yourself out on 9mm. It's interesting. When I re-released this class as like the 1911 driver class, I used to have this class several years ago, and I stopped doing it, and we just restarted it again now. I thought I was going to see a lot of guys bringing in, Springfield MC operators, TRPs, stuff like that in 40 by God 5. And 9mm double stack guns are what is king in my class all the time. It is almost, it's silly how many of them come compared to any other caliber out there. The most rare ones being 38 Super, but we see them every now and again.
Okay.
I haven't had anyone show up with a 40 yet to this class.
Thank God.
Yeah. Well, it takes a special human being to run a 1911 and 40. Let me tell you.
I think there's a condition for that.
Yeah. It's you gotta love some things in order to make that baby work. Has
there been anybody from the cult of the 10mm show up? And
yes, but none that shot it for the entire class.
Okay.
I've had a couple of them start, and then they're like, I'm gonna go to a 9mm. It's like, good plan, because bill drills with 10mm are not fun.
I'd like to watch that. I'd watch one of those. I'm not
it's
sure.
Cool.
I'll shoot it once.
It's cool.
Yep. I'll shoot anything once. Yeah.
So yeah, 9mm is kind of king right now on the platform.
Cool.
Yeah, I was over there personalizing a staccato. It's funny that staccato used to be STI. Is that correct? And the same company, same folks running the deal.
Yes and no. So short answer, yes. Staccato used to be STI. It's under new people, new direction, new gunsmith, so on and so forth. The original owners of STI have nothing to do with Staccato as we know it today. But yes, it used to be STI with a name change to Staccato.
Okay. What going back to the 1911 driver course, what are some skills and standards you're wanting to hold your students to?
Sure. So right now, and Matt kind of alluded to one of them, like our 5 and 4. Right now, my big thing is by the time you finish the course, right, I want you to have an understanding of how the system actually works, right? Have an understanding of how to implement the system specifically on the draw, on refined shots, on more forgiving shots, right? And at distance. I want you to be aware of the capabilities of the system, what it can and what it can't do. And I want you to have kind of a working knowledge of the maintenance of the gun as an end user. So those are my main goals for the class itself. in a perfect world, I'd love to take this class to the next level and have everyone fit their own extractor in the class, and have them fit their own ejector, and fix a bunch of issues. But every time I try and figure out how to implement that stuff, the requirements for the class start going way up, and I don't know of a way to make that actually feasible. So if I can give you at least an understanding of, hey, if you tune an extractor exactly the way I'm going to show you, and oh, by the way, here are all the places you need to be looking from A to Z, right? And it should do this at the beginning and this at the end. I hope you have an understanding enough to where you can go to the range, take your Bull Armory gun, and play with it, right? And tune up your extractor. Or if you're running a gun that when you do start to see feeding issues, right, you don't immediately have to get on the phone with Staccato or Springfield or whoever and say, my gun's broken, please send me a shipping label. I want you to be able to go, oh, wait, AJ talked about this. These are, failures to feed. I should do an extractor test. You'd be able to do it by yourself and then hopefully tune your extractor and leave the range with a working gun. That's what I want to happen. So,
Matt, what advice do you have for somebody that's considering this class?
Let's see. So if you have 1911s, depending on what you have, bring two. AJ brought a couple. I think AJ even brought some in 45. I brought my Staccato, and I brought a Clark long slide in 45 that I did not have the guts to break out because I'm not that cool. I'm not that cool. Sorry.
Because it's a piece of history and it should be in a museum, but whatever.
Yeah, I love that quote. Yeah. Drove all the way from Iowa with him. I was looking at it the entire way. So other than that, I would highly recommend, AJ has really good videos online. Look at some of his videos because for me, like in college, you want to read the text before you go to class. Watch the videos first so that you can think about them. Hopefully not on a 10-hour drive, just on a 30-minute drive. And then you can reflect on them. I would also dry fire, which I mean, that's not even advice. It's something we all do anyways. What else would I say? For people who have done this for 30,000 years or who really think they know what they know about, I'd say really listen to AJ, kill your ego a little bit, because there's reasons that he is what you're knocking out, 2.1 second bill drills from like at your 90% speed on the second day just for fun. So I guess to recap my rambling here, really just bring two 1911s, bring ammo, which I've been to a class where one guy didn't bring ammo. Yeah. And,
yes, I was at that class as well, now that I recall.
I drove that guy to the store, poor guy, in the snow in El Paso. Yeah, so bring two 1911s and hopefully really good note-taking materials. I don't think I really answered that question well. I'm sorry.
No, you did. You answered it just fine. Didn't bring ammo to class. That's not surprising, honestly. I guess it's surprising if you're taking a high-level course, right? Like you gotta imagine that they just thought the ammo fairy was going to show up.
In this guy's defense, I don't know that he actually understood what he had signed up for, and it clearly was his first high-level class. I'm just not sure he really understood what he was getting involved in his defense. So.
And I think he flew and he said he had some sort of weight limit. So I understand, but it's like, this is like right when the ammo shortages was really hard. It's like, man, that's going to suck. I'll drive you. So, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a credit card in your pocket?
Snowed in El Paso. Awesome. I want to talk a little bit about, we were talking about the entry-level 1911s. And AJ, you obviously are very well known for building 1911s. At what point should, if you have somebody that's considering they're intrigued by the 1911, they're looking at going out and buying a Staccato or another, is a Staccato high end, $2,000 1911. How does that compare to having a gunsmith custom build you or custom fit a 1911?
So that's a great question. Let me preface that with this. Not all gunsmiths are built the same, just like not all guns are built the same. I have seen guns come in from gunsmiths that, and some well-known gunsmiths that I would not sell to a customer for parts, let alone call it an actual gun. So buyer beware when you have a gunsmith build you a gun. So, but how do they compare? This is kind of a harsh thing because it's a high dollar amount, but a staccato is not, in the 1911 world, not considered a high-end gun. It's an entry-level gun. But I think staccatos are probably your best value of any entry-level gun out there. Let's think about some plastic guns as entry-level guns, right? I like some of the guys over there, but I wouldn't tell anyone to go out and buy a Taurus today. But that's an entry-level gun. It's a lot of people carry them, a lot of people use them. And to compare, a staccato to a Taurus is not exactly apples and apples, but they're both entry-level guns. When you understand the things you're getting on an entry-level gun like a staccato, right? You're getting one of two sight choices. You're either getting an iron sight gun or you're getting a red dot, period, right? You are getting your choice of essentially 2 barrel lengths. That's it. I don't think staccato even offers anything outside of a 9mm caliber gun anymore. So you get one choice on caliber, right? You now have 2 choices on grip length, right? As far as the, short grip or full size grip. You really don't, you have zero pick in serrations, you have 0 pick in weights, you have 0 pick in any of the cosmetics of the gun. These are all entry level things. When you start getting into custom things, and the things that I should say actually matter, you don't get to pick the type of trigger you're going to have. And I don't mean like flat or curved. I mean, you don't get to pick the weight. You don't get to pick, is it a glass rod? Is it a rolling brake? Does it have a lot of take up? You don't get any of those choices. You get what you get, and that's what it is. But those are things you should expect when you purchase an entry-level gun like a staccato, right? When you get a gunsmith-built gun, you, for the most part, you get a choice in everything. You get to pick the caliber. You get to pick the length of the slide, the length of the barrel. Oh, you don't like this red dot cut? Speaking of red dots, I have to say hi to Wes. Wes, I saw you comment in there. Hello. Good seeing you. Wes is from C&H Precision. What's up, bro? Wes knows what I'm talking about. I fixed his 2011 at the Quest earlier this year. Great gun. Just needed a little tinkering with. But again, the gunsmith choice, you get everything. If I call up my gunsmith, or if someone calls up me, they're like, hey, listen, I want my trigger at 3 pounds, not 2.5, not 4.5, not 3.5, not whatever I feel like putting on your gun today. You get what you ask for. I want 3 pounds. Cool. You're going to get 3 pounds. I want it to have a rolling brake as opposed to a glass rod, snapping carrot, blah, blah, blah. Right? You get what you want from that gunsmith. So you have choices. And that's really, you're paying for that guy's expertise in giving you those options. At least you should be. Not that they're the most important, but cosmetics too. Right? You have to like the way your gun looks. Listen, the biggest problem with factory guns today, all factory guns, is they have no souls. Brian Hill and I have talked extensively about this, right? But they have no souls. 1911 has a soul, at least from a gunsmith it does. That gunsmith put hours of his life. I guarantee his blood is somewhere on that gun, somewhere, right? He is part of that gun. It has spent, at least, depending on how long it took him, hours, if not weeks, if not months, in his care or her care, that they have poured over and thought about and done things. Not to mention all the times it's gone to the range for testing and the care it's been put into this gun. So that means something. At least to me, that means something. That is time. 100% time. It's not a machine time. It's not a CNC. Oh, this took 8 hours on a CNC. It is, hey, that man or woman spent 40 hours of their life, 1 week, if not more, of their life building this piece of machinery. And to me, there's nothing else like that. We don't have that with other guns. So yeah, sorry to get off on my little high horse there on the whole soul thing, but I think it's a big deal. But that's, custom guns are expensive, and it's because you get to choose everything about it, and it's because that's the level of attention that gets put in them or should be put into them, and that's why they cost as much as they do. It's not uncommon, for a custom gun to start at $5,500 and go upwards of $11,000, depending on how crazy you want to get. But that's why.
Can I add something that might sound a little crazy to that, AJ? So I'm actually an engineer, and there's this really crazy theory I'm thinking about in 1911s and guns. It's something called the purity of design, where you have all these people who are really good shooters, and they sit down and they say, okay, I want this in a gun to operate this well for these reasons. And then at the technology at the time, the gunsmith who knows what they're doing puts it together. For example, look at the Delta pistols. I think they're awesome, but you compare them and, Staccato, they look very similar, but we have red dots now. So what I'm trying to say is, I guess, is that when you have this thing, which it's a part of you, it's part of the gunsmith, and you come up with this really cool idea of it to, I'll use the word operate, so I can't think of a better word, of essentially to operate at these incredibly high levels. You have this purity of design that allows you to get to higher levels. And that's what draws me to 1911. But that's part of the craft, is that you have this guy who knows what he's doing, and he has been to school, and hopefully a good school, and he knows about all these really tiny measurements and these little things that are really hard. Like I saw Hilton Yam just like feel extraction. He's like, oh, that one's good, that one's bad. It's like, how do you know that? There's all this time and this energy and all that like encompasses this, what I call the purity of design, to this just salt of this machine that allows you to operate at this incredibly high level. So I really like that idea. Hope we're not getting too weird into like, the wishy-washy, God of Dune style writing here. Sorry.
You can say it. It's black magic.
It is. It's black
it's
magic.
Sorcery. I understand.
Yeah. I don't know what you do in your dungeon, AJ, and your little, like little dwarf fortress. But I want to visit one day, and I want to see you make a 1911, or just make me an awesome, like 9mm Packmeyer Combat Special red dot single stat two-tone.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I think you already asked my question. So my job in this podcast really, first of all, is to make Jeremy stay on track with what we're talking about, because I use this platform for my own benefit mostly. So sorry for the listeners. But the question I was going to ask you, and I think it's kind of apples and oranges now that you kind of answered it. If I took a Staccato and I bought one out of the box and I sent it to you, AJ, would that be better to do that for someone that's not like high-level 1911 guy, or would it be better to call you and say, hey, build me a 1911 custom, compared to like maybe a souped-up Staccato? What would you answer on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, man, here's the deal, right? If you send a gunsmith, a specialist gunsmith, a gun, it's going to come back better no matter what. But you have to understand that if I had my preference, everyone would just have custom guns, right? Because that way you get to, I hate to say, you get to decide and you get to learn with the gun. No one gets it right the first time. I'm going to tell you that right now. The nice thing about having an option like a staccato is you can get a staccato and get it wrong. And you can figure out the stuff you don't like about the 1911 or the 2011 platform. You can figure out kind of the growing pains, the learning pains, and work them out before you get a full-on custom gun. I don't think anyone's first gun or first 1911 should be a custom 1911, because at the end of the day, you really don't know what you're getting into. You really don't know what you want yet. So your time is probably wasted and money is wasted on a full-out custom gun, unless you are buying them as a piece of art and you just love that platform. You love looking at it. You love the idea of it, all those things. Then by all means, knock yourself out. But if you're looking at it from a purely, shooter mindset, you just don't know what you don't know yet. And that takes time to develop. So doesn't really answer your question, but I would say if you have the gun, go shoot it for a while. And I tell guys that all the time. Hey, I want to send you my gun. I've never shot it before. Do whatever you think you need to do to it. Okay, well, I know what I think I need to do to a staccato or to a Springfield or to all these other guns, but I might send it to you and you go, oh my God, why did you do all this stuff? Well, you had no idea what you wanted and you said, let me do it. And this is what I wanted. So spend some time with the gun, shoot the gun for a while, then contact a gunsmith and start working there, or start working on a real custom build once you've developed some time.
I think everything in the gun world, right? It's user specific and dependent upon needs and what the end user is going to be actually using it for. This 1911 course, are you seeing, or 1911 driver course, are you seeing an uptick in some of those guys that are running 2011s in competition showing up to class? Middle of the road gun owners?
Yeah, honestly, the competition shooters are the lowest, I would say, demographic in my class. The highest demographic is going to be concealed carriers and law enforcement right after them. And then competitive shooters. Now, I get a lot of bleed over, though, as well, right? So a lot of cops carrying 2011s also compete, right? A lot of, guys that are carrying a 1911 or a 2011 as a carry gun, they also compete as well. But the guys that show up in, their gamer rig with a 2011 is actually kind of rare in this class. And it may just be because they've been around the block for a while. If listen, do you want to learn some hard lessons? Go run a 2011 and 40 for limited division for a season in USPSA, and you gonna learn some stuff about extractor tension and ramp geometry and profiles, so on and so forth. So yeah, but yeah. Competitive shooters actually make up probably the smallest margin or demographic in my class.
Does Wes run a 40? He said, wait, that's me.
I thought Wes, I thought your gun was a 9, but I could be wrong. But yeah, he dove right in.
If he was running a 40, I know the one person keeping those 40 manufacturers in business. I think you could walk into a store during the middle of the pandemic and buy 40 off the shelf at a discount.
You could.
350 Legend.
Yeah. Oh no, Wes said he was showing up in his gamer rig. Cool. 9 minutes.
Yep.
All right, good deal. Andy, I think you had a question you wanted to kick out to the group.
Yeah, I kind of caught this. I don't know if this is a dumb idea or not. We're going to kind of see, but I'm going to use you, AJ, as our first guinea pig on a question. So, there's plenty of podcasts out there where they review instructors, and at the end you get these questions: 9 versus 45, open carry versus appendix. So I'm not going to do that to you, first of all, but I am going to ask you a random ass question. So all of us are probably in at least 4 dozen gun pages. So I just picked a random question out of a random gun page, Combatives Association. I shared this in their group. So the Mel Armenta said, I have a question. I have a Springfield XD9. I want to get either a red dot or a laser. Stop it, AJ. He's already laughing. I was told by the gunsmith that milling for a red dot can mess up the internal functions, so a laser might be recommended. What are y'all's thought on either? I've shot with irons. You're right. I've shot with irons, and I do well, but I struggle largely after my first shot and realigning. Appreciate the advice and assistance. So, again, before you say anything, AJ, yes, I know this is literally a random question, but I think it's a fair question because people are actually asking these things. For people that are out there like us, for us, we kind of giggle because it's like a laser, man, really. But, there's actually these questions out there, and I think it's a fair thing to maybe give them answers from the pros. So give us your answer, man.
Sure. So that's actually a really easy one. Get rid of the XD, period. Just get rid of it. And then you won't have that problem. So problem solved. But in all seriousness, I don't know enough off the top of my head measurement-wise on the XD before you would run into issues. But it would make sense to me that direct milling and optic in that slide could cause issues, especially with screw placement. So that does kind of check out. My first thought would be you need to contact C&H Precision and see if they cut your gun for the red dot. If they don't, you need to contact Southwest Precision and see if they cut that gun for a red dot. And honestly, if neither of those are an option, I am not a fan of lasers at all on guns. I think they cause way more issues than they solve. I would much rather the shooter invest in, a shot timer or a more ammunition or more training or something else instead of purchasing that laser. Because honestly, at the end of the day, lasers are like night sights. There's such a small application for them, and to base your entire training methodology around it as a sighting system, I think would be a mistake. So that would be my opinion. Again, I would rather you invest in something else other than a laser. So see if you can get the red dot done by one of those two companies, and if not, look for other options.
What about a weapon-mounted light? If we're just talking about gear, would that if you had X amount of money to spend on gear specifically?
Sure. If you're going to actually use it, weapon-mounted lights are great, but I don't base. The thing about it is guys base their entire life off of the laser system. Okay. Back in the day, I think it was Todd Green put out an article with Crimson Trace about how to utilize the laser, but where you weren't using the laser all the time. It was an interesting article, but it made some good points about when to use a laser, when not to use a laser, because there are some, red dots are not lasers. They don't work the same way. We don't utilize them the same way. Yes, you are target focused with both, but that's not the same. It's not the same use. So yeah, I buy another piece of kit that is more useful for you, like a light or a new handheld light or something, a better holster, a better belt, something else. I think your money would be better used elsewhere.
had a so my Glock 48. I had it sent off, had it milled, and I was not aware that the screws uh, were different lengths. And I don't know if it was on the 507 or when I put my crappy. I think it was the RMSC that I had, a couple years ago or whatever. But it did cause some cycling issues. I called up a local gunsmith buddy, called up Rick, and he was like, "I'll bring it by." And then, 30 seconds after, he was like, "Yeah, this is what happened," and just swapped the screws, and it was fine. So yeah, I think that's definitely a real concern. I think if you get it milled by somebody that knows what they're doing, that it kind of reduces the risk of that. Um, and then get on YouTube or get on social media and see if somebody else has had their slide milled for that optic that you're wanting to put on there. And then that way you're not the test user to kind of figure that out. I think with the popularity of red dots, chances are somebody out there has milled the gun that what did he say he had, an XD, Andy?
Yeah, XD9.
Yeah, I'm with AJ. Get rid of the XD.
Same. Matt shaking his head yes also. So there's your answer.
Yeah, I owned an XDM at one point. I didn't know any better. It was my first gun. I didn't know any better. And I think we were trying to get rid of an XD, right? I think you and Judson were going back on who was going to keep the XD, the 45 that we had.
Yeah, it's always funny when you have two guys fighting over who wants to give the gun back instead of keep it. So just saying.
Nice. Hey, so we're already at about an hour and a half here. I want to give you guys the rest of your evenings back. Before we jump off of here, I'd like to go around and just get everybody's parting advice for our listeners. Or if you want to do social media shout outs or both, whatever you want to do, just some parting thoughts for our listeners. And then we'll kick it off with Matt, and then we'll go to AJ.
All righty. So I guess, first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you, AJ, for inviting me. And thank you, Jeremy and Andy. This is really fun. It's cool to be on a podcast instead of watching them. I guess to advice and social media advice is to actually drug practice, as silly as it sounds. Go, make sure because and for the people who are students of the gun, practice purposefully. There's a difference between shooting at bad guys on your TV and actually having a regimen. I know this is super low level stuff, but for everybody else that I see, it's like, come on, what are you doing? You can't just go to a gun range, spend 300 rounds shooting and get used to your red dot 2 days before GSSF, which is what a buddy of mine's trying to do, unfortunately. My social media is gunpowder and paper. I don't really care about getting followers. I have notes on there. It's in a little URL at the, it's all one word. I appreciate that. It's gunpowder and paper on Instagram. It's, I have notes. Just read the notes. You don't even have to like or subscribe. Just read the notes because it gives you so much good information from all these awesome classes. If I could, I would make YouTube videos. I'm just not gifted with that right now, and I don't have the time. Thank you. And so just go read my notes. Scribble them. I don't know. Just read them. I put a lot of work into them. I'm an engineer, and I can write, which is, it's two separate worlds. So I'm really proud about that. Check the notes out. If you don't like them, okay. If you like them, it's like watching a YouTube video, but written. So once again, thank you for having me on here.
No, I appreciate that. Sorry, I was pulling up your Instagram. I wanted to check out some of these notes because Andy, we were talking about it in the pre-show, I think, and AJ was talking about that specifically, how thorough you are with your notes.
Yeah, I have two sets. I have personal notes and then public notes because I take such good notes. I don't want to literally give away the class, so I have to edit them down. So I edit them down for the public, but for alumni, I'm like, hey, you took the class. Here's my notes. These are really good notes. And I give them to the instructor because it's like, hey, here's notes from a student. This is how I saw your class. You might be thinking you're teaching this class, but you're really not. Or you're teaching this one segment, and I didn't get that, or I got more from this segment. It just helps the instructor. So for the public notes, I edit it down slightly, and anybody can read them. I got like 3 classes right now.
I'm a note taker too. But I could never do what you're doing right now because anytime I read my own notes and I'm like, what were you trying to say? But I'm just one of those guys where if I write it down, it somehow transcribes in my brain better. But you know, I can respect a fellow note taker, because I think that's a big thing for me to be able to go back and be able to review the course, because you're, you know, trial by fire and drinking from a water hose and all that. There's only so much you can remember in a course. The other thing is, if the instructors let me, I'll record the whole damn class on my phone, and then I go back and I watch the videos, and then I make funny gifs of AJ. But that's a different story. So AJ, turn it over to you and wrap it up.
Before that, notes. I just pulled open the notes that you have for the 1911 driver class. 32 pages of notes.
Wow.
Very thorough, typed out. So gunpowder and paper, give him a follow. Definitely check out those notes. Sorry about that. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I take notes too, but not like that, man. That's
and
awesome.
those the public ones. The personal ones are a little bit more. Yeah. Thank you. I put a lot of work in. Thank you.
That's awesome. All right, AJ, you're up.
Yeah. Again, thank you guys for having me. Matt, thank you for coming on as well. I guess shameless plugs, because as my friend Hilton says, right, this isn't a charity. So you guys can find me at practicalperformance.org. Pretty much everywhere. Instagram, it's practical_performance_org, the longest Instagram handle ever made. And that's where I pretty much keep everything updated on. If you have questions, feel free to email me. Email's definitely the best way to get a hold of me. Just remember, I'm on the range or in the shop all the time as well. So it might take me a little bit to get back to you, but I will eventually get back to you. As far as classes go, you can find my schedule on the website, practicalperformance.org. Every class I'm teaching is on there, except for my joint classes with other instructors. Those classes can be found at other places. So, yeah, look me up, give me a like, give me a follow. Look for some new YouTube stuff. I've been saying that for like 5 years, but I'm actually going to do it this time, because I might have time in January to edit things. So look for that. If you guys want a gun, let me know. We'll put you on the list. It's a 2-year wait list right now, and getting smaller by the month, maybe. So, yeah. Again, thank you guys for having me. I hope everyone watching enjoyed it, and I hope to see you guys down the road shooting 1911s or 2011s.
I don't know about all that, but, you know, maybe. You know, my final thoughts on this deal is, first of all, thank you guys both. Thank you, Matt, for coming on. Appreciate your insight, and we really enjoyed this one. This is another good one where we have conversation, and the student actually, you know, can come in and just say some things that he chooses and stuff like that. But thanks, AJ. You're the man, dude. You know, I've worked with you a couple times. First of all, I took you. I was in Tim Herron's 2-day practical performance in Prescott, and then over here in the Quest 2022, watching you teach, listening to what you're saying off the line and everything is just super impressive. I'm super excited to see you become that national instructor that you really, really have become. So continue to do it, man. I'm looking forward to taking a course of yours in the future as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show, man. I really, really appreciate it. You're one of those that should be right up there with the guys that you co-instruct with. So I'm just saying that. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
And I don't have anything insightful to say ever, other than, hey, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all stay safe, and we will see you not next week, because I'm going to be, well, not me, but my wife is going to be pushing out our 4th child. So maybe the week after that, depending on how much sleep the baby lets me get. Stay safe, and we'll see y'all next time.